Wow, these Kevins really know how to party. Wonder who they learned it from. Whoa! Kevin, the Bangkok Adonis. Yes. Me and wifey been to Thailand before. It was, passable. The client that I worked for had a small research and development center in Thailand. For this assignment, I tended to fly in every couple weeks and stay for a few days to help the staff out with specific problems they encountered while I was away, and helping them with regulatory requirements that they needed to implement. The development center is a small group of people and a mix of young local Thai and expats from mostly Europe and Asia. The expats enjoyed the nightlife in Bangkok a lot, and on occasion, I would join them. I've seen all the nightlife, go-go bars and strip clubs, and been in all the right and wrong of Soy's alleys with a good crowd. Good times? Good times. I guess if that's what you're into, I'm not in a place to judge. But really, schmecks tourists do make me sick. Men being men. Oh yeah, just write it all off. That's fine. Subjugate an entire country. It's just boys being boys, right? I hate this already, I gotta be honest. From time to time, some of them ended up with a girl in their rooms and a couple of thousand baht less in their wallet a few hours later. But all the expats understood that while you can have a good time with a girl like that, you should stay level-headed and understand that you are basically just paying for a fantasy. It's not a maintainable lifestyle. Pay your bills, stay safe, don't cause trouble, have your moment of happiness, and move on. They all understood this. Kevin, however, did not. Oh God, he's gonna get sprung off a bar girl, isn't he? I've seen it happen a few times in the Philippines. It never turns out well. So let's just gather around for the dumpster fire. Kevin was a new expat in the team, coming from the main branch, and managed to get his way into the Bangkok office because he was sort of having like a midlife crisis. Older fellow in his mid-40s, but looking closer to the late 50s. That old and still, oh, this is sad. He didn't seem to be too bright, and he didn't think about things too much. His work was mediocre at best, and his personality was best described as boring, though he tried to be one of the cool old guys. Emphasis on tried. For the record, I don't think none of y'all are cool. Hey, look, I bought a human being for the night. Wow, cool. Not to be exclusionary, they invited Kevin to go out with them on a Friday night. I happened to be in Bangkok as well, and as his introduction to the nightlife, they decided to hit up places of vice, lust, and greed. Mr. Boring loved every minute of it. A little bit too much, if you asked me, and it would be the start of a wild time in his life with progressively worse decisions. Midlife crisis is tough, man. Just buy a Corvette. It'll be cheaper in the long run. The problem is that putting someone like Kevin in an environment like this is that they start to feel invincible and empowered by their newfound attention by girls half their age, attractive or not, and his decision-making, which was already bordering on bad, soon took a turn for the worst. He was like a kid in a candy shop. While hesitant at first, he ended the night in the early hours of the morning, going home with a girl that had a look on her face saying, yeah, better than nothing, I guess. And I felt for her. Yeah, you gotta make that money. That newfound attention thing is totally real too. You see dudes that couldn't get the time of day in the States and they come over here and they're like, girls are actually interested? I better become a philanderer. Which, I mean, if you're single, that's what you choose to do. I guess that's fine, but most of the times I see it, they got a wife and kid. It's shameful, dude. Anyways, Kevin came in on Monday morning, clearly hungover and exhausted. Hey, high five. Apparently he had caught the bug. Ew. And he spent Saturday and Sunday night in the same districts and sleeping with another few girls. Well, he had his fun. Nobody at the office cared too much and they left him alone. Rite of passage, they called it. Welcome to Bangkok. Yep, still gross, but okay. When the next Friday came around, they wanted to go out with the boys again, but to the usual clubs that they went to, avoiding the worst of the lust and vice and greed. that the city offers, and they just wanted to have some fun between themselves. Yeah, like normal human beings. I sign off on that. Kevin became agitated, like a little kid, and kept pestering them to go to new places that he hadn't been yet. It is really creepy seeing an older man be a predatory man-child. That's been most of my experience with the expats over here. Eventually, some of them relented and took him to some other places that he hadn't been yet. I left on Sunday, but from the chat that I had with one of the guys, I heard that he came in late and hungover and exhausted again on Monday. The chat died down after that. I was busy with many other assignments and forgot all about it. He was boring after all, and someone sleeping with hookers, well, that's not exactly exciting material. And I suppose that's true. If you're not tied down or anything, go enjoy yourself, have a good time, but don't make it weird. And you know Kevin is gonna make it weird. So I came back 6 weeks later and I got a big update. Apparently Kevin had kept up this behavior, and while his work didn't suffer too much, probably because it wasn't very good to begin with, some people were starting to get concerned enough about him a few weeks in. One seasoned expat, sexpat, ew, that had seen it all, and two of the Thai guys took him aside to talk to him about having to slow down and the cautionary tales of people that had done the same as him. He said he would quit in the end, and it seemed to work for a while, but things were about to get a whole lot worse. Oh good, we can fall further. I was waiting for that. While Kevin stopped going with them on Friday and Saturday nights, he seemed to go at it alone for most of the week. He knew where to go now, and nobody told him what to do. The girls loved him and understood him, even though they didn't speak English, besides the little fragments that they picked up and quoting the price for drinks and for fun. That's like two of the three universal languages, sex and money, right? The last one's music, I'm pretty sure. He decided to continue, and the guys decided that they had warned him enough and that he was old enough to make his own decisions. Yeah, he damn old to be acting like this. No matter how poor his decisions were, they would just listen to him complain and laugh it off between them and wait until his year abroad was finally finished. By the time I got back a few weeks later, a whole lot had happened. One of the girls he met told him that she wanted out of the business, and he ended up offering her a non-existent job as an office manager at the company. He had no rights to offer anybody anything. Yeah, let me impress you with this job that doesn't exist. He offered her a salary that was even more ridiculous. Surprisingly enough, she had shown up on Monday morning at the office to start her new job, confusing everybody there. Eventually, they did get her to go home. Oh, that's sad, dude. She's like, I want to quit, but I got no way out. Then Kevin put on his cape and turned into Captain Save-A-Ho. I'm sure they'll make room for you. No, bro. Who are you? At some point in the conversation, it became clear that Kevin wasn't using rubbers with these girls unless they were bothersome about it. He never had an STD test done. Oh boy. Kevin thought that was for gays only. And genuinely thought that rubbers were for pregnancy only. And the only STD that existed was HIV and AIDS, and since he wasn't having sex with ladyboys or gays, I mean, he was totally fine, right? Right? Kevin. He's a simple man. And honestly, ignorance isn't necessarily an excuse, because they got billboards in Thailand. As soon as you land in the airport, they're like, hey, watch out. Kevin got worried after he was told that that is not how it is. And when he had a test done, he found out that he had chlamydia. And he made sure that everyone at the office knew that he had it. He was going to die and wish he knew about this earlier. The truth was that nobody wished to know that he had chlamydia. Did nobody tell him that that's curable? You think that will make him stop? You think that will make him start using rubbers? I doubt it. He's a Kevin through and through. At some point, he learned about in-call massages and gave our business address to a girl that did these massages. That's what you doing on your lunch break, huh? He didn't see anything wrong with getting massaged with a happy ending at work. He was surprised that the Thai guys looked at him as if he had lost his mind. This is normal in Thai culture, right? Right? It's accepted, but just barely, I think. Much like in the Philippines, they'll take your money, but I don't think they're too happy about it. Needless to say, the girl and Kevin were both sent away that day. He had become regular enough to be recognized by most of the girls in the bars, and if they can get a regular guy for steady income, well, they'll play the game, and they'll cry crocodile tears about cheating on her when he's seen with other girls. Kevin was very susceptible to this, and every other week he would be at work clearly concerned about this fake drama and which girl he should choose over the other one, and tell it to everyone who, again, did not want to hear any of it. You realize this is all fake, don't you, Kevin? No, he doesn't. He's like, yeah, she's really my girlfriend. Getting some heavy Chris Trucker vibes right now. Kevin kept telling everyone that he loved Thai food. Thai sushi is so nice. Turns out he had mostly been in Japanese restaurants around this area. Bangkok does have a sizable Japanese population, hence the restaurants. When they eventually took him to a Thai local restaurant, he boasted that he could do the spicy. Nah, dude. He obviously couldn't. Then he'd spend the entire night telling everyone how spicy it was. At least the moments that he was able to talk. Like, yeah, dude, we've been here longer than you. We know how spicy it is. That's why I don't order it spicy, because I want to be able to actually taste my food. But Kevin, you know, he big dumb, obviously got something to prove. Even though he was warned, Kevin thought that looking like a big spender would make him more attractive for the right ladies. Bro, the right lady, she ain't in a bar, okay? He got popular enough, for sure. And at the end of the night, the guy was 15,000 baht. That's like 425 US dollars or euros lighter. And he had to replace all of his cards, including his ID. And there are definitely some scams out there in Thailand. If you go into a bar and the drink price isn't listed, leave. Just don't even ask questions, just leave. But of course, Kevin didn't learn his lesson the first time, and he got his wallet stolen another 2 times in just 4 weeks, racking up another 50,000 baht in damages. That's like 1,400 US dollars or euros before he finally learned his lesson. I can't even feel bad for him, man. He earned all of this, you know? He was told that he would need a re-entry stamp from immigration to keep his visa valid if he was going abroad, which he did on a weekend trip. He was reminded by the other expats, company documentation, and it's stamped in his passport, and he still managed to not do any of it, causing his visa to become invalidated. But because he was allowed a tourist visa, they still let him back in. By the time he found out that he had been overstaying for weeks and ended up having to hire a visa lawyer to get things sorted out, that's how he made a 900 baht, like 25 USD or euro stamp, and a couple hours of his time into like tens of thousands of baht in fees and fines for immigration. Well, I'm sure the royal government of Thailand thanks you for your donation, Kevin. Really is just the biggest dumb. You need to stay on top of these things, okay? If you don't know, if you can't find the information for yourself, ask somebody, for God's sake. But that's not a Kevin thing to do, seeking out information, I guess. So you would think by the time I came back to Bangkok, well, he would have gotten bored of it and straightened his life out, but no. Not Kevin. Things only got worse for him. So by the time I came back, they told me the story of when he wandered into a Ladyboy bar. Honest mistake. It's hard to see sometimes. Some don't specify it. Some are mixed, and, well, when you're drunk, it sort of all blends together anyways. Tell me that you've partaken without telling me you've partaken, OP. The guys that he was with didn't mind. and didn't tell him anything to mess with him. Now, what they didn't know was that Kevin was a bit of a bigot about this. Eventually, he found out when he was already down a sizable amount of money, and Mr. Boring became Mr. Angry, who refused to pay for his and the ladies' drinks. Lady drinks are the high-priced drinks that you have to pay for each girl sitting next to you for around 10 minutes. And he started shouting every trans slur that he could think of, and most there didn't understand him, luckily. Yeah, I think that can very easily be met with violence. I'm sure if they did understand, they would have dragged Kevin out back. Eventually, he paid and left, mostly because the club called in their security, and Kevin was in no state or shape to do anything with them, or so he thought. Before he would leave, he reached out to hit the ladyboy that he had trouble with, though it was more of a weak slap. But to her credit, that ladyboy could pull a punch still, and gave him a nice bruise on his face. Yeah, that was an inevitability. I knew the violence was coming. You can't just let stuff like that slip. After that incident, he was surprisingly silent around the office. I guess it hurt his masculinity and ego. Maybe that was all he needed to bring himself back to reality. I left without further incident and wouldn't be back for another 6 months because the project I worked on with them wrapped up, and the new one would not require me until another 6 months in. When I came back, Kevin wasn't there anymore. Asking what happened to this Adonis of the Bangkok nightlife, I got the rest of the story. Apparently, he had found love in one of the bars. A girl called Tree, they told me. Obviously, not her real name. Thai nicknames are really weird like that. Me and wifey met a girl named Bicycle out there. He quit his job in the days after, which invalidated his visa, and he definitely knew after last time, and he eloped with this girl. Oh my God. He's Captain Save-A-Ho for real. Nobody had heard from him in months until he sent one of the expat guys a message on Instagram telling him, Thailand was a terrible country. He had been fined and deported based on the fact that he had no valid visa and wished that he had never come to Thailand. I'm sure the Thai people feel roughly the same way. Kevin also said that he wished he never met all those women because all they wanted was his money. You just figuring that out? It's adorable. Tree had left him as soon as the money had run out. Well, yeah, Kevin, everybody warned you. TLDR, Kevin goes to work in Thailand, searches for love in all the wrong places, goes off the rails despite ample warnings and advice, and ends up being deported. Okay, so not the clearest cut example of a Kevin that we've ever seen, but it's close enough, and it fits in closely with all these other expat losers that I see running around in the Philippines. It's just inherently hilarious to me. Yes, you can come live like the Maharaja until the money runs out, and then nobody wants to be your friend no more, Kevin, because you got no personality outside of that, Kevin. I mean, kinda he does, but it's an ugly personality that nobody in their right mind would want to associate with. So good, go back to the States, be a nobody again. It's nothing but what you deserve. Episode still a little bit short. Let's go ahead, jump into another Kevin story, and we'll see what else we got here. Kevin and the Coke. Hey, I told you, they like to party, bro. Party even, whoa. I'm gonna tell y'all a stupid story, and I'm gonna tell it just the way that I remember it. Yes, it's about a Kevin, but I'm not gonna spare myself here either. I used to be a dumbass too. Well, admitting you have a problem is a first step to fixing it, so I'm not gonna judge you too hard, OP. I don't have much of a defense, except that I'm from Florida, and this took place there. Florida man! Maybe that's all the defense I need. I don't really know. I do grant people from Florida like a lot of leeway, okay? This story happened during and because of my employment at a Radio Shack. Oh, I used to work at a Radio Shack for a little bit. It's like my first job ever. And it is a sales job, and much like a used cars dealership or whatever, it gets a little bit rowdy. If you didn't already know, Radio Shack workers used to be the absolute freaking party animals back in the day. Probably why Radio Shack shut down, honestly. We're all hungover. I tell you this because no one out there seems to understand just how hard a nerd can go, and because it's germane to the story. So yeah, I was working at a Radio Shack in South Florida, and we had just completed our inventory. God, man, the memories just come flooding back. Anyone who has worked in retail knows just how awful and tedious and freakishly time-consuming an inventory can be. Since this happened back in the 1980s before QR codes and phasers came out, we had to find, count, and record each resistor, transformer, and capacitor. Every fucking item in the whole store by hand, with nothing but pen and paper. And oh boy, did Radio Shack have like a lot of little parts. Probably one of the reasons they went under, honestly. Now you can find the parts a lot easier and cheaper online. Of course, this whole task was mind-numbingly dull, and the process took several days to complete. This was also back when the movie Titanic came out, and the company had some kind of eldritch corporate partnership which required us to play that abominable song on repeat all damn day. I'm so glad I missed out on that one. You know the name of the song. Don't make me say it. Naturally, out of self-preservation and sheer desperation, many of us employees resorted to unholy amounts of drugs and alcohol. Oh, come on, that's just an excuse. You know you liked it. All right, I need to pause the story for a second so I can ask you guys a question. Have you ever had someone sidle up to you? Like actually crab walk sideways and then kind of slide the last 2 steps up to you? Like Kramer from Seinfeld? Hey. Well, if you haven't, let me tell you that it's just as weird and off-putting as you're probably imagining. I bring this up only because that's the thing I think about whenever someone mentions Kevin. For story purposes, you guys should know something about Kevin. I don't have enough characters in this subreddit to do his existence justice, so I will just give you a basic synopsis. This guy was something else. I'll qualify that statement by saying that he once got stranded for 4 years in Brazil after a falling out with his prison pen pal girlfriend. Yeah, he makes some good decisions, doesn't he? And before you ask why a Brazilian would write to an American inmate, I'll explain that he wasn't the ex-con. She was. I presume that much. He found her through the back pages of some magazine. The story of how Kevin learned about long-distance telephone charges goes here, but I'll save that tale for another time. I'd read it. Probably be a lot shorter than this one, though. When this girl finally kicked Kevin out of her house, something to do with identity theft, smuggling, and exotic parrots. You can't make this stuff up. Kevin attempted to force the American government to send his broke ass back to the United States by literally lying on the street outside of the embassy and wailing like a banshee on bath salts. As you can see, Kevin was not the sharpest of tacks. Yet none of that's gonna work. I've seen Americans be stranded in the Philippines. It's not a good life, and the embassy, really, they can only do so much. Sorry for the interruption here, but OP just wanted to make sure that you guys understood a little something about Kevin before we continued telling the tale. So, back to the story. It was around 10 p.m., and we had just finished reconciling the inventory counts for the last time. Done! Finally! While it did turn out to be an excellent inventory, it was particularly long and grueling, and we were all exhausted and hangry by the end of it. My boss, being awesome, decided to celebrate by picking up a bunch of beer and pizzas and inviting us all back to his house. Radio Shack does create some close bonds, you know? It's pretty weird. After work, I used to go blaze with this lady coworker of mine. I was in a relationship at the time, but she was gorgeous. Probably way out of my league, but I think she was into me. That's why she invited me back to her house, right? She showed me her nipple rings one time. Man, I missed the boat on that. Anyways, this is technically where the actual story starts, because this is when Kevin sidled up to me in the parking lot and asked me if I wanted to go with him real quick to pick up a bag of coke. That sounds like a really bad idea, man. I guess I'm not the sharpest of tacks either, because I agreed to go. Yeah, that's trouble. I had a car, but Kevin insisted on driving. This was a problem because Kevin drove this busted-ass 1976 Lincoln Continental. It was probably a beautiful example of American automotive engineering in its day, with its original deep dark green paint job and flippy headlights, but now it was decrepit. The seats were sticky, where they weren't completely threadbare, and the exterior was a veritable museum of failed cosmetic repairs. This thing was covered in primer, missing all but one of its hubcaps, and the glove box oozed some vile amalgamation of spilled coffee and shea butter. Because you see, Kevin had a skin condition. Well, at least he's trying to get it taken care of. The hubcap thing is what weirds me out, bro. Quit hanging on to the last one. Just pack it in, you know? Hang that last one up on the wall so you can remember a time when you had all four hubcaps. The car smelled just awful. Like a dead squirrel filled with old Arby's and whipped cream and then left to rot in the tropical sun. We don't generally get those descriptions in Kevin's stories, but I love it. If I'm being honest here, I rather appreciated the shea butter and coffee. In that car, the Ooze was a feature. This OP's awesome, dude. Standing there in the pale, washed out light of the Radio Shack sign, I weighed my options and made my decision. I laid an old hoodie strategically over the passenger seat and climbed in. Smart. After all, free drugs was always worth a bit of hardship, right? Well, wrong. After a surprisingly uneventful drive, we get to his friend's place. We went inside, and when he came out, he was bouncing and armed with this huge 8-ball. I mean, this guy really did him right. The very sight of this thing made me super excited to get back to my boss's house so we could get down to some serious hoovering. I have hoovered a bit in my day. I don't think I was into it when I was working at Radio Shack, though. There was this guy that used to come in right before closing all the time, and he's like, "Hey, man, you like to party?" I'm like, sure, dude. And he gave me his phone number. And then the girl that I work with was like, "You know what he's talking about, right?" "No, I don't. I'm 18. I'm innocent." She's like, "I think he wants to sell you coke." And I'm like, "Oh, well, no, not gonna do that." Kevin put the car into gear and began to talk. I was ignoring this as irrelevant, absorbed in my own thoughts, when all of a sudden, Kevin hit a trash can. Because I wasn't sure if the hit was intentional, I glanced over. Uh-oh. Kevin was bent over, sweating and bug-eyed, fidgeting with the radio and simultaneously glancing back and forth between the rearview mirror and the side mirrors. Worried, I sat in watchful silence as he navigated his way out of the neighborhood. His conversation never faltered, even when we dinged the mailbox. Damn. I guess he was testing some of the product when he was in the house, wasn't he? With a sinking feeling, I realized that his gills were way past geeked. It was now around 11:30, and traffic had begun thinning out. His driving had deteriorated exponentially since leaving his friend's place, and I was only just then coming to terms with the fact that the reward, fat though it was, might not be worth the imminent disaster that I could now see barreling down upon me. I mean, it's the 90s, there's no Uber, but maybe you could get out at the next gas station and call a taxi. Anything to get the hell out of this car. I knew then that this night was going to end badly. Something was going to happen. Something bad. My mind raced. Shit. We got drugs. Kevin is driving. Kevin is driving this car. Fuck. Oh my God. Capital F-U-C-K. Next stoplight, bro. Bail out of the car, bro. Tuck and roll, bro. This vehicle is obviously held together by a combination of prayer, spray foam, and Bondo. Also, he's got no registration and an expired license. What are you doing? Why do you choose to live this way? I know all of this because Kevin told me after we left with the coke. Kevin told me a lot of things during that drive. He answered a lot of questions about himself that I never asked, and he probably answered them really fast like this. In fact, Kevin was so deep in cocaine conversation that he missed a critical turn on the main highway. Upon realizing that he missed this turn, he waited for the next intersection, and against my desperate protestations, immediately cut across 3 lanes of traffic and slung that huge boat of a car around in a U-turn. Jesus Christ. While rather graceful, the move was illegal, and there was an unmarked police car behind us. Oh my God. We're going to jail, bro. We're going to jail.
I'm going to jail!
I freaked out. Then when the cop lit up his lights, I freaked out again. This time loud. "You freaking moron!" I yelled. Kevin pulled over, except Kevin didn't pull over to his right, like any normal human being would do. No, he pulled over to his left, into a turn lane. Cop's like, oh boy, this kid's geeked out of his mind. I don't even have to see his face. The cop pulled up behind us and waited, probably confused. And I think it was this confusion that saved me. I say me instead of we, because at this moment, Kevin decided that he had it all under control. If I remember the sequence of events correctly, and I will never forget what I witnessed in those few moments, Kevin winked at me and then proceeded to pull the Coke bag out of his pocket and empty it into his mouth. Oh my God. That's enough to kill a horse, bro. What are you doing? Then he started chewing. I should tell you that this was like a solid 3.7 grams of yellow flake Coke, hard as a rock and uncut. It was huge. Choke it down and die of a heart attack or go to jail. We all make decisions. I sat awed and mesmerized at the scene unfolding before me. The red and blue lights flashing into the interior of the car made the whole thing even more surreal. All I could think was, oh my God, he's eating it. He's eating it. He's eating a whole 8-ball of blow. Wait, he's the driver. Instantly frightened and struggling to overpower the creeping sense of horror shivering up my spine, I screamed at him. Something along the lines of, "What the fuck? What are you doing, you idiot?" And that's the exact moment when Kevin realized that he had royally screwed up. Generally, when one gets pulled over by the police, they expect a coherent response, even in South Florida. "I can't feel my mouth, officer." He flung the car door open and dashed into the night. This is comedy gold, dude. I mean, he is amped up. He got the juice in him. He's gonna be fine. He can outrun a greyhound. I can only imagine the consternation of the police officer behind us as Kevin abandoned his car and bounded away into a neighborhood. I can't breathe, dude. I sat frozen in the passenger seat, amazed and stunned as the cop car behind me disengaged and took off down the side street after him. To this day, I don't know if there was only one police officer in that police car or if he or she was operating under some regulation that made a driver more important than a passenger. It may have just been that I was a small chick in a huge car and therefore camouflaged against the seat. I really just don't know. All I do know is that Kevin was gone. The cop was gone and I was sitting in a running vehicle in the middle of the road. So yeah, I took off. That is the smartest move you could have made. What the hell are you gonna do? Wait for them to come back? Nah, I'm good. I gotta get the hell out of here. In what I can only describe as a semi-fugue state, I drove Kevin's car back to the Radio Shack. After dropping off his car and getting mine, I drove to my boss's place, determined to get my fair share of pizza and beer in recompense for this fiasco of a night, and also to inform my boss that he would have to open the store tomorrow because Kevin was most likely not going to make it in on time. I was regaling everyone with the story of just why he wouldn't make it when the front door banged open and Kevin stumbled in. Dude, what? He made it? How did his heart not explode yet? I'm not exaggerating when I say it was like one of those old West saloon scenes. You know, the ones where the whole place quiets when the hero enters? It was just like that. Except instead of a hero gliding, it was Kevin flopping. He was soaking wet and disheveled, wide-eyed, completely out of breath, and his shirt was missing. His exposed torso and arms were crisscrossed with deep scratches and abrasions. He looked like he had been in a fight for his life, which I mean, technically, I guess he was. A fight for his freedom at the very least. Taking off the shirt's maybe a good idea too. If you're ever running from the cops and you can change your clothes, never mind, I'm not giving out tips. We all must have been staring at him in silent astonishment. I know that I was. Kevin squished into the room and collapsed wetly into a chair. In a garbled voice, he asked me if I had his car keys. And then, relieved with my answer, he motioned for a beer. Okay, get the guy a beer. He's had a hell of a night. Turns out he did manage to successfully evade the cops that night. At the last moment, he found a drainage canal and jumped in. Fortunately, this saved him from arrest, but unfortunately, he wasn't alone in that canal. According to Kevin, an alligator chased him, because we are in Florida. Chased him through a bunch of thorny brush out of the water and then up into a yard. He said he was terrified almost to death, but he couldn't scream for help because his mouth was frozen from all that coke. He, quote, barely escaped with his life. I mean, that doesn't seem like exaggeration. Now, when it comes to this last part of the story, I don't know how much of that is actually true. However, I do know that I saw this man literally chow down on close to 4 grams of rocked up pure Peruvian marching powder before frickin' swallowing it. Then I saw that same dude evade the police by vanishing into the dark like some kind of overweight Hungarian Zorro. Before reappearing, triumphant and somewhat unscathed hours later. Based on all this, yeah, I do choose to believe him about that alligator. Either way, it was a night to remember. And that, my friends, is the stupid story of Kevin and the coke. I'm sorry you read this. I'm not, bro. That's absolutely beautiful. What a triumphant victory for one very, very dumb Kevin. I gotta admit, I want to hear more stories about this Kevin. How did he get out of Brazil? I guess he's like, you know, juiced up on rocket fuel and just flew back into the US. He found about 4 grams and he's like, okay, I can make it across the border. It's fine. Jump into a drainage ditch. What a maniac. And I love to see it. This is some high quality Florida man stuff right here. And God, I'm living for it. Thank you so much for sharing, OP. Totally made my night. I hope you guys enjoyed the tales as well. Second one definitely takes the crown over the first, but you know, sometimes we gotta warm up like that. Like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, share it around. It's pretty safe to share, I guess. If people like to party, whoa. Check out the links in the description. TikTok, Twitter, Discord. I'm basically everywhere on the internet. I appreciate you. I especially appreciate my Patreon patrons, my YouTube channel members. We thanked them yesterday, but I do want to thank them again today. Not by name, just, you know, in general. Thank you guys so much for helping me survive. If you can afford to donate, join them. That's huge. If you can't, don't sweat it too hard, friends. I just appreciate you coming on through, hanging out with me. I hope you'll come on back, hang out with me again tomorrow. In order to do so, you need to keep yourself safe out there. Wash your hands. And of course, always remember, friends, that you are loved, you are worthy, you definitely, definitely deserve it. And I shall see you in the next one. So until then, bye-bye.
It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown.